One of the things that we're tracking most closely on this show, The Hard Count, in the Rose Bowl, is Oregon's weaponry. I mean, they're absolutely stacked. I think that deserves a little bit more attention heading into this matchup, this rematchup, I suppose, against the Ohio State Buckeyes in Pasadena. We'll break it down right now, but first things first, make sure you're subscribed right here to the On3 YouTube channel. College football, nothing but college football. Appreciate you being dialed in. Also appreciate PrizePicks bringing you the Hard Count today. Whenever you use code HARDCOUNT over at PrizePicks.com, $5 in lineups gets you 50 in promo funds. All right, if you want to fade us with that $5 lineup, do it. You want to follow us, even better. But regardless, 50 in promo funds to maximize the rest of this college football playoff run, not a bad deal. Again, code HARDCOUNT. Appreciate y'all using that and appreciate y'all being subscribed. So here's where I want to start. Oregon has been absolutely lethal on the offensive side of the football for a number of reasons. You could point to Dillon Gabriel. You could point to Will Stein. I think in that discussion, though, you better make sure you point to the quantity of weapons that Oregon has on the perimeter. They have, count them, 4 different individuals with over 500 yards receiving. Y'all, that is silly. Absolutely silly. So in this rematch with Ohio State, remember now, the game plan against the Buckeyes in Eugene was like, hey, hold on tight. We're taking these boys vertical. And that was the first time we had really seen Ohio State be challenged in the secondary. Ohio State, quite frankly, has an NFL secondary if you're going to talk about guys that are eventually going to be draft picks in the National Football League. But when you talk about, again, the approach in this game, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. To quote the great DKR, like, you dance with the one that brung you. And there is several individuals that brung you if you're talking about the Oregon offense. Dillon Gabriel, I think, is really the guy that you focus on when it comes to maximizing the weaponry, because he has been absolutely surgical. You're not able to maximize the quantity of weapons if you don't have a quarterback that's dialed into the system, to the scheme, to the timing. Took a little bit of time to get acclimated to the Oregon offense in a gameplay scenario for Dillon Gabriel after transferring to Oklahoma. But, I mean, since then, he's been absolutely dialed. 73% completion percentage, averaging 8 yards an attempt. Like, he's arrived. If we were worried about Dillon Gabriel at all before the season started or at the early part of the season, we can't be anymore. So the big thing here with the quantity of weapons, that forces you to make what I would call matchup decisions. Do you want to give Tez Johnson some space and have him one-on-one, or do you want to give extra attention to Evan Stewart? Do you want to give some extra attention to the middle of the field with Sadiq or Ferguson or Trayshawn, or do you want to go and try and give a safety over the top to make sure you don't get beat again? So there's a lot of different variables to this, but again, Dillon Gabriel being able to go to the right place with the football, being able to ID the defense, and be able to be on time, most importantly, and get the ball out of his hands with 2.2 seconds, I think is the average right now. That's massive, and that's going to give this Ohio State defense, I think, a lot to work with. So the PrizePicks square that I love, I mentioned all those different weapons. I'm going to take it back to the epicenter of this thing with the Oregon offense. I think Dillon Gabriel, his number with 17.5 rush yards over at PrizePicks.com, to me feels a touch too low. I also like his completions number. 21.5 completions is his PrizePicks projection when it comes to the matchup with Ohio State. In both of those categories, he has surpassed those numbers for the last 5. Okay, so I'll take the more on rush yards, take the more on completions. There's a high likelihood Tez Johnson pops or that Evan Stewart pops or whoever, but there's too many mouths to feed to make me feel great about just putting it all on one individual when it comes to the PrizePicks side of things. But I'm excited for this one, man. It's going to be a lot of fun to break down. So to help us do that with a little bit more depth, let's bring on the man, the myth, the legend, producer for the Hard Count, and a 3-time Kentucky Derby jockey champion, Kaiden Smith. Kaiden, fired up to talk some ball with you, man. What do you like in this game?
JD, I really like how you broke that down. I think you perfectly described the weaponry that Oregon has and how when it comes to like a PrizePicks perspective of trying to place a wager on these things, it makes it hard when there's so many mouths to feed. So I think Dillon Gabriel was definitely a great, safe, independent variable of Oregon's offense, the engine of the offense. Obviously, he has a ton of mouths to feed, so taking his overs is definitely a good thing. And I think when you think of that same frame of mind, you talk about the Trayshawn Holdens of the world, you talk about the Evan Stewarts of the world. Those are two guys that are very boom or bust. They're either not going to do much for your offense or they have a day where they have over 100 yards or scoring touchdowns. So those are guys that you maybe could avoid. Tez Johnson, obviously super consistent. If you have him at 75.5, I would take the over on that on PrizePicks for that square specifically. But I think another independent variable, which kind of speaks more to maybe the Ohio State side of things and how they could potentially adjust to the last game and how they've adjusted lately. Maybe they try to give some more attention to those guys out wide, try to not lose over the top to a Tez Johnson or an Evan Stewart like you did last time. Maybe try to be more effective at getting some pressure on Dillon Gabriel. I think however you cut it, I think one of the independent variables as well is going to be the tight end Ferguson. I think when you look at what he's done this year, he's been an excellent security blanket, and I think they're going to need him as much as possible in this game. So give me him 33.5 on the yardage. I would take the over of that. He also has a Green Goblin, 2.5 receptions. I think that's an absolute lock. You know I love those Green Goblins. So when it comes to players in this matchup, really like what Terrence Ferguson could do for Oregon. I think he's going to be a reliable guy as well for Dillon Gabriel, who you also like in this game.
Dude, I'm so fascinated to see how each of these coordinators approaches this. Like specifically in this matchup with the Oregon offense versus the Ohio State defense. Like Jim Knowles, Cornell alum, shout out Jim Knowles, the Ohio State DC, like he's the Mad Hatter. He's the mad scientist. He's going to bring some pressure. He's going to be exotic, going to be creative. How creative can you be the second time around against a sixth-year quarterback, a guy with a lot of weapons and a really, I mean, let's call a spade here, one of the rising stars at the coordinator level, who I expect to be a head coach here soon in Oregon's Will Stein. Like that chess game, after they've already played one game, is going to be so fascinating to me. And, I mean, just truly NFL battles across the board, dude. Like, Ferguson and Caleb Downs, like, yeah, Simon, Denzel Burke and Evan Stewart, okay, yep, I'm here for that. Like, there's going to be just so many high-quality matchups. Dude, I can't wait for this.
I can't either. And I think when you talk about Jim Knowles, I think he's a very big X factor as far as how this game will play out. I think it's very clear that Ohio State kind of changed up their identity defensively as a result of the last Oregon game. I think their pass rush has been a lot more effective, a lot more stunts, a lot more of that Caleb Downs in the middle of the field kind of patrolling things, making sure things don't come across the middle, things don't get to the second or third level in the run game. So I think that puts a lot more pressure on those guys out wide when you talk about the cornerbacks for Ohio State. Obviously, there's a call to action for those guys to not have what happened to you last time. Don't get bombed over the top like last time. So that's going to be such an interesting matchup to watch. And I think with those stunts, too, you mentioned, the best thing you can do is get pressure on Dillon Gabriel, make him a little bit off schedule, a little bit off time, but you just can't picture him making a ton of costly mistakes in this one. So it's going to be very interesting to see kind of the Jim Knowles versus Dillon Gabriel of it all. I think he's going to try to make things as hard as he can for an experienced quarterback, and how much can the experienced quarterback get the ball to his weapons as best as possible? How often can Will Stein manufacture offense for those guys? So I'm excited to see this one again. From a PrizePicks perspective, if you expect a shootout like you got last game, if you expect Dillon Gabriel to be a little bit more effective, maybe go like I do and do a bunch of Green Goblins in a row. Yeah. A little bit on Ferguson, a little bit on Tez Johnson, a little bit on Holden. Let those guys deliver for you. The running back James, he can obviously have a big game too. But if you think maybe Ohio State's going to be more effective, that's where you put the ball in Dillon Gabriel's hands, let his total go up. Jordan James, the running back, Terrence Ferguson, the most reliable pieces of the offense possible might be the play there as well.
Hey, I want to brag on you too, Cato, a little bit. First team all Green Goblin. Like, we've had a few days walking to the office here. You show me some of the remnants of your Green Goblin plays, and it's just like, bam, bam, hit. So I mean, if you want to follow someone here, and Cato's got a Green Goblin play he likes, might not be the worst idea to try and help yourself a little bit and follow Cato with the Green Goblin plays. I'm so glad you mentioned pressure, because I think if you're Oregon, like you just mentioned, that's the one thing you can't have happen, right? Like, you can't have Jack Sawyer get cooking, JT Tuimoloau, I guess the swim move working a little bit, and then, so I think the question I have then is, if I'm Ohio State, do I play more aggressive as a secondary and try to mix up the timing for Dillon Gabriel and try to maybe be physical with those receivers to allow Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau to get home? Or do I say, okay, we learned our lesson last time, we want to give some space here, we're going to give you that little Tez Johnson bubble route, we're going to give you the check down to Evan Stewart, and if we get home every so often, or if we have some success up front, so be it. But we're not getting beat over the top. That to me is going to be telling. Be very, very telling.
I think it's going to be a challenge for both defensive coordinators. I think when you look at the talent as far as skill players for both teams, You can get stressed in a lot of different directions with speedy wide receivers, good running backs that are up the middle, and mobile quarterbacks. So there's just a lot of space to defend. And you'd imagine Oregon comes into this matchup a little bit more confident in that department as far as what they've been able to do offensive this year, more consistently, obviously beating Ohio State as well. So I expect them to be aggressive in their game plan. And when you're in Ohio State and you know a team's probably going to come out aggressive like that, I think for them, you want to stay over the top like you did last time. You don't want to get beat by the deep plays, but you also don't want to get chipped away in the run game. You don't want the chains to just constantly move slowly, methodically, because Will Stein has shown he has the patience to do that. He can give the ball in a bubble screen. He can run some quarterback run. He can get the run game going pretty easily. So I think if you're in Ohio State, you obviously don't want to have those deep, big, explosive plays beat you. But at the same time, you want to be effective on an every down basis. And I think for them, stopping the run is probably going to be the top priority. If you can do that and at least somewhat make Oregon a little bit one-dimensional, get them behind in the chains, that's when you can dial up those blitzes, let the guys pin their ears back, the JTs like you were mentioning, the Jack Sawyers. If you can get in third and long and create scenarios where your defense can do that and be more aggressive, I think they're going to be in good shape.
The uniform matchup here, too, is awesome. Like Ohio State adding some roses to the helmet, a little Rose Bowl flair. I'll just kind of set the scene here. Ohio State, you and I are in the studio watching them just belt to behind against Tennessee. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Ohio State is about to go on a tear. Then I see maybe it was the Oregon football page on Twitter, or someone released the cleats they were wearing for this game. You got some Oregon Kobe Bryant cleats. I was like, all right, I feel tremendous about my national title pick. I feel tremendous about my Rose Bowl pick. Like the cleats alone, Cato, men lie, women lie. Footwear don't lie. Footwear don't lie.
It don't lie. I think when we're just talking swag optics, uniform optics, it's hard to beat Oregon. I think if we're just going to evaluate on that standpoint, Oregon's probably going to go on a multi-national championship run here. We talked about the potential, how scary it would be as far as momentum goes for Oregon if they do win this national championship, just from a recruiting standpoint, a Dan Lanning standpoint, the swag standpoint, the drip standpoint. It's off the charts. If they win this national championship, the national championship gear is going to be sick. The uniforms will probably only get better. I pray for the rest of college football if Oregon just continues to take it to another level on and off the field. I'll just say that.
Without a doubt. I mean, hey, well, stock the trophy room. We're talking about the threads for the good folks out there in Eugene. Kaiden Smith, best in the business, again, producer of the Hard Count, and just bring us some juice here. Bring us some juice to the conversation around this Oregon-Ohio State matchup. Fired up for it. Make sure you are subscribed. We will have reactions for you after the fact, whether it be right after the game from Andy Staples and Ari Wassman, whether it be us on our own program here in the Hard Count. But regardless, man, appreciate y'all. Love y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time.